We gotta lock these coaches up. By now, you probably heard of the Shromore case. Imagine being a student athlete, hearing all this stuff about leadership, principles, and morals that they need to follow in life, and then seeing that same coach being down bad in an OF model's DMs. And so this had me thinking to myself, how many college coaches could I remember were absolute freaks? So I started doing some research. You know, I hopped in my CIA detective bag, was looking at details, and as I'm reading this stuff, all I can think to myself is, we need to investigate every sports coach we possibly can. Because I don't know what it is about coaching ball. I don't know if it improves like blood flow to your penis, but something needs to be done. Because we have college coaches misdialing escort services, pro coaches getting caught in public, even coaches sleeping with their brother's wife for 8 years. Let's see how I breeze through this video. Okay, look at this man. Look at the look in his eyes. You may be thinking to yourself, Hef, we're starting with an absolute powerhouse of a story here. This is Houston Nutt. While he does look like an absolute freak, he actually got fired for head coach Hugh Freeze for the Ole Miss Rebels football program. There's Hugh with his big ass teeth right here, and he builds the Ole Miss program into a powerhouse in just 1 year. This guy had the number 8 class in just his second season, all right, with guys like Laramie Tunsil, Laquan Treadwell. This is surprising because Ole Miss wasn't that good of a football program at the time. He took over a 2-10 team, and in his first year he went 7-6. So whether or not that recruiting class was legit or not, that's for you to decide. All right, but Hugh Freeze said, I want all the smoke. Matter of fact, we'll take it to Twitter. All right, look at that profile picture. This guy means business. All right, if you have facts about a violation, send it to compliance@olemiss.edu. Now a couple of years go by, and Houston Nutt comes back. He's trying to clear his name because when there were rumors that Ole Miss was paying players to come to the program, they weren't just accusing Hugh Freeze, all right? They were also accusing Houston Nutt. So then the NCAA knock on Ole Miss's door. They start tracking everything, you know, emails, plane trips, phone calls, just a classic pat-down. And what they ended up investigating was 12 calls to escort services. Big Teeth dialed at least 12 numbers that are associated with online advertisements for female escorts.
The call came hours after Freeze and other members of the Rebels football staff landed in Tampa, Florida for a recruiting trip.
That's nuts. Like, you have a high school football player's number right below an escort service number. And you might be thinking to yourself, Hef, man, the guy's just a bit horny, you know? Just trying to get some puh. You know, what's the big deal? Ignoring the fact that he has a wife, all right? Just ignoring that. The funniest part of the story is the attempted cover-up. Because when ESPN asked Freeze about the alleged phone call last week, he denied purposely calling an escort service, saying, we call the wrong numbers all the time. Like, come on, man. This guy thinks ESPN is like some 3-year-old kid. He ends up resigning, all right? You can't see his teeth anymore. And of course, it comes out that he was also paying his players like every SEC school. So you're probably wondering, where's Hugh Freeze now? You know, what's Hugh up to? Well, he just got fired again, this time from Auburn, who for some reason made the decision to hire him. 15-19 record, and he will be owed $15.8 million in buyout money. Matter of fact, 49 M's. Let's make it even better. And on top of that, his wife comes out and said he's the godliest man I have ever known. This guy's a genius. His wife is still with him, all right, even after 12 escort calls, but that's not as crazy as Bobby Petrino. Because just 2 weeks ago, North Carolina, that other freak, they just hired Bobby Petrino as their offensive coordinator. And I think it's kind of funny because we all know Bill Belichick's story, you know, 76-year-old dating like a 24-year-old. But Bobby Petrino, he's a bit of a different story. We got to go back a little bit here, all right? 2008, this is Bobby Petrino coaching the Arkansas Razorbacks right here. Pissed. And again, I don't want to get too much into their personal lives. That's not what this video is about, but it's just important for context. He has 2 sons and 2 daughters with his wife, Becky, all right? That's just important for context. Now, one day, Mr. Petrino, he was riding his motorcycle, cruising down the street, you know, and all of a sudden, the sun kind of gets in his eyes a little bit, you know, he can't really see, and then his bike crashes. Now, any regular human like you and I, we probably need some rest, a couple days off after a crash like this. We'll fall into a ditch off a motorcycle, gotta heal from the injuries, you know, but this guy's a football coach. He's gotta show his boys an example of toughness, all right? And that's what Bobby Petrino does. The next morning, gets up and discusses what went down during the motorcycle incident.
Right as I came off the pavement, I remember hitting the brakes and trying to load, lay the bike down and take a little leap. And then I was fortunate when I did get up, was able to get up, get in the street. There was a car waiting there that said, hey, we'll take you to the hospital right now.
Well, you see, none of that was true because there was a second person on the bike, all right? And that's where we introduced this gal, who was the football program's student athlete development coordinator. Her name is Jessica Durrell, all right? And she was hired as a staffer by Bobby Petrino. I don't even know why she's in this photo. At a fan sign. Like, what could she possibly be signing? What is she signing? Petrino hired her, gave her 20 bands, you know, started a relationship off the field with her. She apparently had an unfair and undisclosed advantage for the job. All right, she beat out 158 applicants. And of course, after everything comes out, he gets fired from Arkansas. All right, he loses $18 million. So he wasn't as lucky as Hugh Freeze. And I know I said earlier he is now the offensive coordinator at UNC, which is true. He's under Bill Belichick. But at one point, he was actually named the Arkansas head coach again. This was September 28, 2025. He was appointed interim head coach for the remainder of the season after the motorcycle accident, landing in a ditch, getting exposed for an affair, lying to the police, your wife, your kids, with a scraped face and a neck brace. He was back at head coach for the same exact team. That is some absolute wizardry, all right? But now I gotta talk about the NBA, because I gotta address the first NBA coach who became suspended for an entire season, Ime Udoka. For years on end, Coach Ime Udoka was melting knowledge from Greg Popovich's brain, being an assistant at the San Antonio Spurs. And during those years in San Antonio, he ends up having a kid with Nia Long. Now, if you don't know who Nia Long is, you probably recognize her from one of these movies right here. I recognize her from Fresh Prince. But then he gets the honor, the privilege to coach the Boston Celtics. And he was very successful, all right? Matter of fact, he took the Celtics to 6 games against the Warriors in the 2022 NBA Finals. He was up 2-1 in that series, all right? Seen as an up-and-coming head coach in the league. He was from the Popovich coaching tree. He's got all the potential in the world. Then he gets suspended for an entire season. People start panicking, freaking out, not knowing what happened, because there's never been a head coach in NBA history that's been suspended for an entire season, let alone from their own team. But it was revealed by a Woj bomb that Udoka had an intimate relationship with a female member on the franchise's staff. And while the Celtics tried to hide her identity, Nia Long did not care, all right? She knew who it was. It was this girl right here, who apparently was the person who coordinated travel for the team and their families, including overseeing the relocation of Nia Long and the couple's son. So let me get this straight. Not only did he cheat, but the girl that he cheated with helped Nia Long move to Boston to get closer with Ime. Oh my god, this world is sick. No, man. This is what I'm talking about, man. Some of these coaches need to get locked up. Now Ime Udoka's coaching the Rockets. He's coaching Kevin Durant. Living his best life, smiling. He's probably got new hair. I feel terrible for Nia Long, man, but now we gotta get into the Godfather. I gotta go brief with Rick Pitino, because there's a lot of scandals to cover. He was running his basketball team like the mafia, all right? And he was introducing his recruits to some strippers. He wanted gooners in his starting 5, all right? He wanted that hunger. He wanted that desire. And while he denies about knowing any of this stuff, he also had his own personal case.
Pitino told a jury that a woman accused of demanding millions of dollars from him had sex with him after whispering to him and unzipping his pants in an empty Italian restaurant.
Rick Pitino was at a restaurant. A girl comes up to her. Somehow the restaurant closes. Pitino said the sex lasted 15 seconds and was unfortunate. 15 seconds!
Cypher is charged with extortion, asking for cash, cars, and a house to stay quiet about the sexual liaison.
The weirdest part about this is after the fact, the girl ended up marrying this guy named Tim Cypher, who was Pitino's special assistant while he was working with the Boston Celtics. What is happening with this video? The next coach I want to talk about is hired by this man right here. One of the most aggressive mustaches I've ever seen in my life. But he ended up hiring Urban Meyer for the head coaching job at Jacksonville. Now, Urban was a legend, college football legend at Florida, did his thing at Ohio State. The guy could coach college football. And during that dominant collegiate run, he was married to his wife, Shelly, for 35 plus years. But this was his first NFL head coaching gig, and it was pretty rough. He wasn't very good. On October 1st, 2021, he said the loss to the Bengals was devastating and heartbreaking as they were 0-4 to start the year. But the team is in Ohio as they just played the Bengals, so while the rest of the team flew back home to Jacksonville, Urban Meyer decided to stay, paying his own steakhouse a visit. You know, this guy's an Ohio legend. Gets caught with this girl at his own bar. Somebody was filming, all while his own wife was at home babysitting. All right, because when a fan tweeted out a photo of him with Urban Meyer, she tweets #Buddy deserved a night out. She ends up deleting Twitter. Urban Meyer gets fired. Now he's on TV. But the last case of this video is the worst case of them all. We need to talk European football, because we're here to talk about Ryan Giggs. And while he was an interim manager at Manchester United, he was more well known as an absolute club legend. All right, one of their best players ever. Here he is scoring against my club, Arsenal. Jesus Christ. My goodness, this guy's hair. But after his career, he also managed Wales and ended up getting them qualified to the Euros. And he slept with his brother's wife. His own brother's wife. So Ryan, the footballer, meets Natasha first in 2003 at a club. And then a couple months later, she met Rodri, Ryan's brother. I don't know if it was through Ryan, but you could probably assume that it was. So the two start dating, and obviously she cuts off Ryan because, you know, she's dating his brother. But then a year goes by, and she starts seeing Ryan again in hotels and empty houses.
We met in hotels. I worked as an estate agent, so I had access to properties. It would meet in various properties at different times.
So you'd have houses that you're about to show, and you'd say, listen, there's a house up the road.
Yeah.
I'll see you there at 12. So you continued the affair while you were pregnant with his brother's child, and you just kept going. You were how long pregnant before he said, I better stop now, or?
I was about 6 or 7 months pregnant.
Okay. And as all that was going on, you'd go home to Rodri and say, you know, the pregnancy's going fine, all that kind of thing.
So she was 6 months pregnant with the brother and still shagged Ryan. I did not hear that part of the interview, man. But then in 2011, he got caught. Ryan's family cuts off Ryan. The dad said he would have beat him up. But then there was Rodri, all right? This guy making this face. Here was his reaction.
Details emerged that, afterwards that they'd had an 8-year affair. They were going to have sex when Natasha was pregnant, 6 months pregnant with your son.
We had a fallout, and there was messages on her phone, and that's when I had the instinct that it was Ryan.
A text had come through, I think it's described her as sexy.
Yeah.
Did you break the phone?
Yeah.
So you didn't know who it had actually come
No,
from?
but my instincts were it was Ryan.
And how did you find out about it?
6 o'clock in the morning, a mum and a sister knocked on the door and presented the paper and a letter on it.
How had it got in the papers?
Through Natasha.
Why had she done that?
That's obviously for money.
So Ryan and Rodri run away to Spain knowing that this story is going to come out with Rodri's kids, and Rodri just has to take it on the chin all by himself.
Did you confront her straight away?
Well, she'd gone to Spain, her phone was disconnected, and she took the kids to Spain.
And did you confront your brother straight away?
He was in Spain as well. Couldn't get hold of Natasha, and Ryan denied it.
He denied it initially, didn't he?
Yes.
And how did you manage to prove that you knew?
I'd said to him I had texts and pictures, and that's when he admitted it.
Since then, Rodri has forgiven him somehow.
I've moved on, and it says like I've forgiven him. I forgiven him a couple of years ago, to be honest.
And look, there's a bunch of rumors that I found while I was researching about this story, but the good part is Rodri, the brother, has married again. Okay, so I guess there's a happy ending. Is that a happy ending? I don't even know. I'm pissed, man. Like the Wolverine, he literally could have begged any girl he wanted at the time. Like that's how big of a superstar he was. He could have chose any woman in the UK, and he chose his own brother's wife. Like, come on, dog. Just lock these coaches up immediately, man. I'm pissed. I don't want to make a video like this anymore. This video sucked.